Welcome to this week's virtual Drasha. This week we have the incredible opportunity to conclude Sefer Vayikra by reading the double parshios of Behar and Bechukosai. And nestled in these parshios, really nestled in Bechukosai, are the dramatic and overwhelming psukim of the Tochecha. The Torah records a series of curses and punishments which will befall the Jewish people in the event that we do not heed the word of the Ribono Shel Olam. In the event that Chas v'Shalom we are not attentive to the mandates and the dictates of the Torah, Kadosh Baruch Hu says, "V'im b'chukosai lo selechu, mitzvosai lo tishmoru." If you don't walk in my pathways and you don't follow my mitzvos, then the Ribono Shel Olam unfortunately outlines a journey of death and destruction, which will occur chas v'shalom to the Jewish people. But I want to draw your attention to what occurs immediately after the Tochecha, because immediately after the series of curses and punishments, the Torah says this is the beginning of Perek Chaf Zayin, chapter 27. Vayidaber Hashem Moshe leimar. Hashem said to Moshe the following: Daber al bnei Yisrael v'amart aleim. Speak to the Jewish people and tell them, Ish kiyaf li neder be'erkecha nefashos l'Hashem. If a person will take an erech vow. The Torah gets into the discussion of vows, but not just any vow, an erech vow. An erech vow is where a person pledges their personal value to the Beis HaMikdash. The Torah goes ahead and describes objective amounts or objective quote-unquote values to different genders, different age brackets. So the Torah speaks about the halachos of an erech vow. So just for example, when the Beis HaMikdash stood, if I were to make the statement, Erki alai, I hereby pledge my value to the Beis HaMikdash, so then I would be obligated to go ahead and give a certain amount of money. Again, depending on my age, depending on my gender, I would be obligated to donate a certain amount of money to the Beis HaMikdash. And the great tzaddik Choseh of Lublin asks a simple question. The Rebbe says, why is this section right here? You just gave me some of the most devastating psukim in the Chumash. You just outlined some of the most heart-rending, heart-breaking psukim, punishments, overwhelming distancing from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And now right after that, they give me the laws of erech vows. What's the pshat? And the Choseh of Lublin says something so incredibly amazing. He says, when a person lives through a tochecha, a person lives through a life tochecha, and that life tochecha could be some tragic circumstances which befall Am Yisrael, the Jewish people, or sometimes we experience our own tochecha. I experience my own curses, I experience my own punishments, I experience my own tragedies, my own upheaval, my own personalistic circumstances that just leave me wondering what's happened. And says the Choseh, sometimes after a person lives through a tochecha, they erroneously assume that they have no worth, that they have no value. He says, I want to read to you his words. After living through a tochecha, be it a national tochecha, a personal tochecha, tipo rucho shel adam bikirbo, a person will become so depressed and so demoralized. V'yomer, ein li shum erech v'chashivos. And a person will say, you know what, clearly I have no importance. Clearly I have no importance. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu could visit such circumstances upon me, either nationally or personally, if I could live through such tragedy, such trauma, such upheaval, such difficult and overwhelming circumstances, then obviously the Ribono Shel Olam doesn't think all that much of me. Obviously I'm not worth all that much, because after all, if I was righteous, this wouldn't have happened. If I was good, this wouldn't have happened. The person thinks this way. And says the Choseh of Lublin so beautifully, we don't know why things in life happen. Whether it's national tragedies or whether it's personal tragedies, whether it's Klal Yisrael upheaval or just individual upheaval, we all go through circumstances and which we look at and we wonder, why me? Why did this happen to me? But says the Choseh, right after the Tochecha, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us the laws of the erech vow. And the erech vow means a person pledges their worth to the Beis HaMikdash. And the Choseh of Lublin says the message being that even after you live through a tochecha, you still have value. You still have worth. Never chas v'shalom think that when you go through difficulties in life, it means that you're worthless. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes we go through that tochecha, we go through difficult circumstances, difficult situations, we experience failure and defeat, and it leads us to erroneously think that we are worthless. What good am I? How many times have I failed in life? How many times have I been defeated? How many times do I feel like the rug has been pulled out from under me? How many calamities has Am Yisrael suffered through? Many of us as individuals, how many calamities have we suffered through I feel like I have no value. I feel like I have no worth. To which HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Daber al b'nei Yisrael va'amarta aleim, ish kiyaf li neder be'erkecha. You have a value. Every person has a value. Every Jew has a value. Some of us have simchas and some of us have tsaras. Some of us, everything falls into place, and others amongst us, it feels like it's one day of tochacha after another. But even if you live through tochacha, and even if you live through difficult circumstances, don't ever allow yourself to fall into the trap of thinking that you are worthless. Every Jew has an erech. Every Jew has a value. Every Jew, every life has a meaning. But the narrative goes on, because the Torah then records something amazing. So as I mentioned before, the Torah goes through the different valuations, men, women, old, young. And listen to this. The Torah says as follows: if a man is between the ages ben shishim v'malo, 60 years old and above, so the Torah says his value is 15 shekel, 15 shekel. Yet a few verses earlier, the Torah said that if a man is between the ages ben esrim shana v'shishim shana, between 20 and 60, your value is 50 shekel. Incredible. So between 20 and 60, my value is 50 shekel, 50. And 60 and above, my value is 15 shekel. What's the pshat? Why the diminution? Why that dramatic decrease in personalistic value between 20 and 60 and 60 and above? And it's here that another great tzaddik, the Chidush Harim, the Ger Rebbe, says something incredibly beautiful. He says, because do you know where a person's worth stems from? My true value is rooted in my ability to change. That's where my value comes from. Why do each of us possess it? Why do I possess value? Because the truth is, in any moment I could choose to remake myself. In any moment I could choose to be greater. In any moment I could choose to be better. In any moment I could choose to be different. That's the koach I have. My value, my personalistic value, is rooted and fundamentally tethered to my ability to change. And the Chidushim says something amazing. The older we get, the less likely change becomes. Now, to be clear, the Rebbe is saying change is always possible. Always possible. The shaila, the question is it probable? Change is always possible. But the older we get, the more set in our ways we become, the less probable change is. And says the Rebbe, that's why the Torah gives a different value. You see, between the ages of 20 and 60, when a person is still in the prime of their koach, so they have a very high value. Why? Because there's an incredible, not just possibility, but probability of change. But then when a person is 60 and above, a person could easily say, you know what? I'm already 60. 60 is young, don't get me wrong. I'm already 60. I'm kind of set in my ways. I've lived my life the way I've lived my life. This is who I am. Love it or leave it. This is it. This is it. Not going to change. The moment that the probability of life change, the moment that the probability of personalistic, cathartic change diminishes, my personal value goes down as well. Our value as who we are as people is fundamentally tethered to our ability to change. So if we bring the Chose and the Chidushei Harim together, the Rebbe of Lublin and the Rebbe of Gur, we bring them together, the Torah is teaching us such an incredible and overwhelming lesson, which is even in the aftermath of devastating circumstances. And I think this is much more relatable, especially on a personal level. If I go through devastating circumstances, and devastating is a relative term. Devastating could be a failed marriage. Devastating could be illness. Devastating could be financial ruin. Devastating could be a whole variety of things. A person could so easily fall into the trap of thinking that they're worthless. And so in the aftermath of the tochecha, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you're worth so much. Daber al b'nei Yisrael v'amart aleim ish kiyaf li neder be'erkecha. You have a value. No matter what has happened in your life, no matter how many setbacks, no matter how many pitfalls, no matter how many missteps you have made, I still have a value. That value is there. But where does that value stem from? The value of a person is fundamentally rooted in their ability to change, says the Chidushei Harim. That's where our value stems from. I have value because in any given moment I can remake myself. I have value because in any given moment I could choose to be better. I could choose to be different. I can choose to be holier. But we must be ever aware that the longer we wait to change and the older we get, the more difficult it becomes. To be clear, change is never impossible. Up until you draw your last breath, change is possible. The difficulty is the older we get, it's less probable. Kadosh Baruch Hu has given us this ultimate bracha, the bracha of change, the ability to transform ourselves into whoever and to whatever we want. There are changes we all have to make. Let's not delay any further. The world is so uncertain. Life constantly throws us national and individual curveballs. If there are changes we have to make in our lives, let's do it now. And know that when you exhibit that courage to change, you are actualizing that inner worth. And that inner worth is yours, no matter what has happened or what will happen in life. May we be Zochem Yirtz Hashem to appreciate the worth we each possess and to activate that inner worth by making our necessary life changes. Wishing everyone a wonderful Shabbos.